This happened just a few months ago. I was 16 and finishing up my junior year at Crestwood High. I loved photography, and I wanted to capture everything before summer took me away from the familiar halls. My last day felt normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something odd was happening. During lunch, I spotted the janitor in the gym. He was there, broom in hand, moving methodically across the creaky floor. The sunlight poured through the windows, and for some reason I felt like saying hello. I walked over, but as I got closer, he stopped. His eyes wide, he stared at me while mumbling something I couldn't catch. I felt a chill run down my spine. Just as I was about to ask if he was okay, he turned away and resumed sweeping. I shrugged it off. Maybe he was just having a bad day. Everything was strange after that. In history class, Mr. Collins called on me but didn't recognize me. I raised my hand to answer a question, and he looked right over me, like I was invisible. "Emily," I said, feeling my cheeks flush. He blinked and moved on to the next student without missing a beat. It was odd, and I wondered if he was just exhausted from the school year. Later, while sitting at my locker, a girl named Melissa approached. I'd only talked to her a few times. She leaned in, whispering personal stuff about me, my favorite bands, where I spent my weekends. I froze, laughing awkwardly. "How do you know that?" I asked, feeling uneasy. Her smile was strange, like she knew things about me that I had never shared. She shrugged and walked away without answering. I stared at her retreating figure, confused. After that, I started packing up my things. I felt something heavy in my backpack. I opened it, and there it was, a photo I definitely didn't take. It showed a group of students I didn't recognize, all standing next to an ancient tree by the school. They were smiling, but their eyes seemed off, almost hollow. One of them looked right at me. My heart raced. I quickly shoved the photo back into my bag, trying to convince myself it was just a prank. As I walked outside for the last time that year, everything felt surreal, like a dream I couldn't wake up from. I turned back to look at the school. That familiar building now felt strange and watching. I thought I saw someone standing in the doorway. They were just staring. I couldn't tell who they were, but I felt a cold sweat trickle down my back. I hurried away, but that person's face lingered in my mind. Why did they look so familiar? My chest tightened as I hurried to my car. When I looked back one last time, the doorway was empty. The feeling that something wasn't right stuck with me as I drove away, the odd day weighing on my mind like a shadow I couldn't shake. The next day I woke up to an unsettling quiet. My dreams had been restless, filled with shadows and unfamiliar faces. I tried to shake it off as I got ready for summer, but the heaviness lingered. I couldn't focus on any plans. Instead, I felt drawn back to my school. I grabbed my camera, hoping to capture a few final shots of the empty halls. Maybe if I could take some interesting photos, I'd feel better. As I approached the school, I noticed a strange stillness. There were no cars in the parking lot, no laughter from the playground. It was odd to see the building without its usual flurry of activity. I stepped inside the front doors. The air was heavy, and the faint smell of cleaning supplies hung around. My footsteps echoed down the land hallways. I wandered through the empty classrooms, the silence pressing against me. When I reached the gym, I paused. The lights were dim, and everything was the same as I remembered, except for the overwhelming sense that I wasn't alone. That's when I caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye. I turned, and there he was, the janitor. He stood at the end of the gym, gripping his broom tightly. His back was to me. I felt a shiver run through me, a mix of curiosity and dread. "Hey," I called out hesitantly, raising my hand in greeting. He didn't turn. Instead, I saw him start sweeping in a slow, circular motion, as if he were lost in thought. It was the same odd behavior from before. My heart raced as I approached. Are you okay?" I asked. Just like the day before, he stopped. I thought he might finally respond, but instead, he whispered something incoherent. Feeling a chill, I took a step back. "What did you say?" I pressed, but he only resumed sweeping, ignoring me again. My skin prickled as I decided to leave. It felt too weird. I turned to go when a loud crash echoed behind me. My heart jumped, and I spun around, but the janitor was still just sweeping, unfazed. I backed away, wanting to escape. I stumbled out of the gym and headed back to my backpack. On my way, I spotted something unusual on the floor near my locker.
A small, crumpled note. I knelt and picked it up. The handwriting was shaky, almost frantic. They watch. Don't trust them. I stared at it in disbelief. What did this mean? Who was watching? Shaking my head, I shoved the note into my pocket, trying to level my breathing. The earlier sense of unease intensified. As I turned to leave the school, I glanced back one more time toward the gym, and my breath caught. Through the glass window, I saw the janitor, standing still now, gazing right at me. I could feel his eyes boring into my soul. Panic surged as I dashed out of the school, heart racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was incredibly wrong. Then, as I reached my car, I heard a voice behind me. Emily! It wasn't just any voice. It was familiar, and I turned, startled. My childhood friend, Hannah, stood there, but something about her expression sent a chill down my spine. You shouldn't have come back, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And just like that, I knew I had to know more. Hannah's eyes were wide, her expression serious. I felt the blood drain from my face.
"What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She glanced around as if to check for anyone else. "Just trust me. You shouldn't be here. It's not safe." My mind raced. Not safe? From what? The janitor? The thought teased at the back of my mind, unwelcomed but persistent. "No," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It's not just him. You shouldn't have come back, Emily." I looked back at the school, the building looming over us like a dark sentinel. "I just wanted to take some pictures, Hannah. That's all." "You don't understand," she replied, shaking her head. "It's not about pictures." She hesitated, her brow furrowing as she looked at me. "I've seen things that aren't right." I took a deep breath, standing a little taller. "What have you seen?" "Let's just get out of here first," she urged, her voice tight with urgency. I could feel the tension mounting between us. The noise from the school felt like it was pressing in, drowning out our conversation. Reluctantly, I nodded. We walked toward our car, parked farther down the street. As we moved, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was as if the very walls of the school were staring at me, judging me for returning. "Do you remember last year?" Hannah asked suddenly, her eyes darting toward the school. "The rumor about the old teacher who disappeared?" I remembered. Everyone had whispered about it, as if saying the words could summon him back. "The one who went missing after a staff meeting?" "Yes, people said he'd gotten too close to something he shouldn't have." Her voice trembled. What if it's still happening? What if the janitor knows?" Panic coursed through me. I thought of the note I found. "I found this," I said, pulling the crumpled paper from my pocket. I handed it to her without a second thought. Hannah's eyes widened as she read it. "This confirms it. Someone must know." "What do we do?" I felt lost, my heart racing again. "First, we drive to my house. Then we figure out what's going on," she replied, her expression hardening with determination. "But we have to be careful. They're watching." I got in the car and buckled my seatbelt, but just as we were about to pull away, I caught a glimpse of movement. The janitor was standing by the school entrance, watching us. His broom hung loosely at his side, and even from this distance, I could feel the weight of his gaze. "Go," I shouted, my voice sharp with panic. Hannah didn't hesitate. She slammed her foot on the gas, and the tires squealed as we shot down the road. I glanced back at the school. The janitor was gone. Attention hung in the air, a mix of fear and uncertainty. I turned to Hannah, my heart pounding in my ears. "What is this about? What happened to the school?" That's when I saw the shadow in the rearview mirror. Someone was following us. Instinct kicked in, and dread washed over me like a wave. Hannah's grip on the wheel tightened. "We have to lose them." Hannah swerved sharply to the right, her focus set on the narrow street that led away from the school. The car jolted, and I felt a rush of adrenaline as my heart raced. "Do you think they saw us?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. "I don't know," she replied, her voice strained. "But we can't go home yet, not until we shake them." We sped through the neighborhood, the familiar landmarks blurring by. I peered into the rearview mirror, anxiety gnawing at me. The shadow was still there, a dark silhouette following us, relentless and determined. "Where do we go?" I asked, panic slipping into my voice. "Let's head to the old park," Hannah said, her eyes darting. "It's easier to lose someone there." She took a turn onto a less traveled road, hoping it would conceal our escape. I glanced back again. The shadow was still there, a dark shape that wouldn't break away. Each second felt like a countdown, the presence behind us becoming heavier with each heartbeat. As we approached the park, surrounded by thick trees and an aura of abandoned memories, Hannah slowed down. "We can hide, just for a moment." "Are you sure?" I didn't want to be trapped anywhere. "Trust me," she insisted, pulling into a small, overgrown lot. She turned off the engine, and we sat in silence. The shadows around us felt different now, like they were closing in. I held my breath, waiting for something to happen. After a few moments of heavy silence, I dared to speak. "What did you mean back there, about things that aren't right? You need to tell me." Hannah hesitated, her eyes staring straight ahead. "I saw things after the teacher disappeared. Strange shapes in the windows at night, whispers in the halls. I thought it was just my imagination, but..." She trailed off, a chill running through her. The thought of something lurking behind those walls sent a shiver down my spine. I could almost hear the echoes of laughter that once filled the hallways, now replaced by an unsettling quiet. Before I could respond, I noticed movement outside. A figure was approaching the car. I sucked in a sharp breath. It was a sheriff's deputy. Relief briefly flooded over me, but it quickly turned to anxiety as I watched him stop a few yards away, glancing around. "Should we talk to him?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Hannah shook her head. "No, we can't. If he's involved in this, whatever it is, we might be in even more trouble." Just as that thought settled in, the deputy turned toward us, his eyes narrowing as he took a step closer. "Hey, you two," his voice boomed, cutting through the stillness. "What are you doing here?" Panic surged. "Start the car," I shouted. But before Hannah could react, I noticed something that stopped me cold. The rearview mirror revealed the shadow again, now much closer, and I realized it wasn't just behind us. It was alongside the deputy. Another figure, this time dressed in a dark coat, appeared, blending with the shadows of the trees. "Hannah, we can't stay here!" Hannah screamed, her panic matching mine. The deputy moved toward us, his hand reaching for his belt. Then, everything went dark. When I came to, the world was a blur of sound and motion. My heart pounded, drowning out everything else. I blinked, trying to adjust my eyes to the darkness. Panic settled in my chest like a stone. "Emily," Hannah's voice cut through the haze. "Are you okay?" I immediately turned my head toward her. "Where are we?" I asked, my voice shaky. I felt the coolness of the seat against my back, but everything else was a haze of confusion and fear. "I think we're still at the park, but I don't know if they saw us," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Look!" Following her gaze, I spotted the faint glow of a flashlight cutting through the thickening darkness outside. The deputy was still there, his shadow stretching across the ground as he searched the area. My breath hitched. "What if he finds us?" I whispered, my pulse racing. "Just stay quiet," Hannah urged, clutching the steering wheel. "The car is off. We can't be seen if we don't move." I leaned back, my heart hammering against my ribs. The dark figure was no longer by the deputy's side. For a moment, I thought we were safe, but that relief was short-lived when I heard a rustling noise outside. "What was that?" I hissed, my skin prickling. "I don't know," she murmured, eyes wide and locked on the darkening surroundings. The deputy moved closer to the car, flashlight sweeping over our spot. I held my breath, hoping he wouldn't spot us, hidden in the shadows. If we were caught, I couldn't predict what might happen, especially after what Hannah said about strange shapes and whispers. The flashlight beams suddenly stopped, illuminating a figure that stepped out from the trees. My heart sank as I recognized the figure shrouded in darkness. It was the shape I'd seen before, the one following us. "Who are they?" I whispered, fear rising. Hannah's eyes darted between the deputy and the shadow figure. "I don't think they're looking for us." "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling dread crawl up my spine. "Look," she said, clearly trying to sound brave. "They seem to know each other." The shadow figure and the deputy exchanged hurried whispers, their expressions unreadable in the dim light.
I strained to catch snippets of their conversation, but it was all jumbled words. Then the figure turned slightly, and my stomach dropped. I could see a face hidden behind the collar of the coat. It was someone I recognized from school. "Oh my God," I gasped. "That's Tim, isn't it?" "Tim?" Hannah looked confused. "Why is he with the deputy?" Before I could process it, Tim suddenly gestured toward the park entrance. The deputy nodded and looked back toward the woods. It felt like time slowed as I watched them, the tension thickening in the air. My mind raced with questions. What did they want? What was going on?
"Emily, we have to get out of here," Hannah said, her voice urgent again. The deputy started moving away from the car, but Tim lingered, looking around as if he sensed something. Then everything changed when Tim turned back, locking eyes with me through the darkness. Fear jolted through me as he pointed right at our car. "Run!" I shouted. Just as Hannah hit the gas, I felt the car jolt forward and heard a loud crash. Suddenly, everything in the back seat piled onto me as I braced myself for whatever was coming next. Then, darkness enveloped us again. I woke up to the sound of crumpled metal and shattering glass. My heart raced as I blinked against the blaring light invading the space. I could see Hannah in the front seat, frozen, mouth parted in shock. Behind us, the remnants of the park, once a familiar place, now felt foreign and threatening. "Are you okay?" I finally managed to ask, my voice shaky. "I think so," she replied, breathless. "What just happened?" I pushed the disorientation aside and scanned the surroundings. The car wasn't moving, and the sounds of the park, the rustling leaves, the far-off laughter, felt muted, almost ghostly. My gaze fell on the windshield, cracked and splintered from where we collided. "We hit something," I said, panic creeping back in. "I didn't see anything in the road," Hannah shouted, pushing the door open with a force that startled me. "We need to get out of here." Reluctantly, I followed her out. The air outside felt heavy and electric, like a storm was brewing. The park looked eerie in this light. Shadows crept like they were alive. My instincts screamed at me to run, but curiosity held me in place. "What did we hit?" I asked, unsure of what I wanted to find out. Before she could answer, we heard voices nearby. 2 men were coming down the path, their silhouettes sharp against the afternoon light. I instinctively moved closer to Hannah, who seemed just as unsure as I was. "Do you think they're—" I didn't finish the question. The thought that we might be in more trouble sent chills up my spine. "Let's just go," Hannah whispered, urging me forward. We hadn't taken more than a few steps when I heard a rustling in the bushes to our right. My heart leapt again. "Wait," I said. "Something's over there." But before I could process what it might be, a small animal darted out, scurrying across the path and into the trees. I exhaled, embarrassed for panicking over a raccoon, but then I noticed the 2 men had stopped talking mid-sentence. They turned to look at us. "Who are you?" one of the men called out. I held Hannah's arm tightly, as if that could shield us from this new danger. "We're just what?" the other man pressed, stepping forward. He was tall, with a rough demeanor that made my stomach churn. I hesitated, knowing that lying felt just as dangerous as telling the truth. "We were out for a walk," I finally managed. "That's quite the walk you've taken," the first man chuckled darkly, glancing at the wrecked car behind us. "Hiding from something, are we?" "We weren't hiding," Hannah shot back. But before I could stop her, my eyes were caught by something behind them, a figure in the distance, half hidden by trees. I squinted, recognizing the coat. Tim stood there, looking at us with an unreadable expression. His gaze shifted from us to the men, then back again. "Tim?" I called out, my voice hesitant. But instead of responding, he turned to leave, melting back into the trees. Panic surged again. "Emily, we need to go," Hannah shouted, but I couldn't move. Something deep inside whispered that this was all connected, that whatever was happening involved us more than I realized. "Tim, wait!" I yelled, taking a step toward the trees, but the 2 men blocked my path. "Don't run too fast, girls. You might not like what you find," one of them warned. That's when I saw it, something gleaming on the ground just beyond the men, a glint of metal partially buried in the leaves. Was it connected to Tim? What did it mean? The men were closing in, and suddenly I had a decision to make. Stay and risk facing whatever they planned, or run into the woods after Tim and hope he could explain everything.
My heart raced as the choice stirred inside me. Would there even be time to think? "Let's go!" Hannah shouted again, grabbing my hand. And just like that, we bolted, fear propelling us into the shadows where Tim had disappeared. The world blurred around me as we ran deeper into the trees. Hannah and I pushed through the underbrush, the branches scratching her arms like the claws of unseen creatures. I could hear the men shouting behind us, their voices growing fainter as we put distance between us. We stumbled to a halt, panting, and I looked around. The trees loomed like giants. Their shadows crept over us as the sun dipped lower, casting everything in a dim, eerie light. Anxiety clawed at my insides. "Do you think they're following us?" Hannah asked, her eyes wide. I don't know," I replied, trying to catch my breath. "Maybe we should keep moving." "Where do we even go?" she said, glancing back toward the way we came. That's when I remembered Tim. We need to find him. My mind raced with questions. Why had he run? Had he seen something? I thought for a moment before deciding we should head deeper into the woods. Hannah nodded, even though concern flickered in her eyes. We tread carefully, the ground uneven beneath our feet. I wondered how we had gone from an ordinary day at the park to running for our lives. As we delved farther, the air thickened with a palpable energy, and I felt a strange urge to look back. Just as I did, something rustled in a nearby thicket. My heart raced. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. "Yeah," Hannah said, her voice barely above a murmur. We stepped cautiously toward the noise, the shadows feeling heavier.
Then, before we could react, a low growl erupted from the bushes. I jumped back, pulling Hannah with me. "What was that?" "I don't want to find out," she said, backing away. But my curiosity got the better of me. I needed answers. Another growl followed, more intense this time, and a large dog-like creature emerged, its teeth bared. For a split second, we stood frozen, staring into its eyes. They were wild, filled with something unrecognizable. Fear or fury, I couldn't tell. "Run!" I screamed, and we turned, bolting away again. The creature chased us, bounding faster than I thought possible, jaws snapping close behind. Adrenaline coursed through me as I pushed myself harder, branches clawing at my clothes, but I didn't care. The trees began to thin, and in the distance, something caught my eye, a flash of light, flickering like a beacon. "Over there!" I yelled, leading us toward it. As we burst into a small clearing, I stopped in my tracks. The light came from a series of strange symbols etched into the ground, glowing with an otherworldly aura. They were not from any language I recognized. In the center, a small crystal pulsed rhythmically, casting rays of color around us. "What is this?" Hannah gasped, her fear melting into awe. Before I could respond, the growling sound faded into eerie silence. The creature had stopped, standing just at the edge of the clearing. It seemed frozen, as if entranced by the glowing symbols. I stepped closer, drawn to the crystal. Then, as if someone had pressed a button, everything went dark for a split second. When the light returned, the creature was gone. "What just happened?" I asked, bewildered. "Did you see that?" Hannah nodded, her face pale. "We need to get out of here. I don't like this." But before I could say another word, an eerie voice echoed from the trees. "You shouldn't have come here." My heart sank. We weren't alone. The day was spiraling out of control, but I knew we couldn't turn back now. I turned slowly, scanning the tree line, searching for the source of the voice. The air was thick with tension, every rustle sending chills down my spine. "Who's there?" I called, my voice shaking. Silence hung over the clearing like a heavy blanket. Hannah clutched my arm, her grip tight. "We should go," she urged, glancing nervously around us. "I can't just—" But before I could finish, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a woman, tall and cloaked in dark fabric that seemed to blend with the surroundings. Her eyes were piercing, and I felt a strange pull toward her, as if she held answers to questions I hadn't even dared to ask. "You're not supposed to be here." Her voice was calm, but it sent a shiver through me. "Neither are you," I shot back, trying to sound braver than I felt. Hannah inched closer to me. "What does she mean?" The woman smiled slightly, but there was nothing comforting about it. "These woods have secrets, secrets that can consume you if you're not careful." "What do you know about Tim? He was with us," I blurted out, my heart racing. I needed to know what had happened to him. "Your friend is on a different path now," she said, her gaze shifting to the glowing symbols. Here, time and reality can bend in unexpected ways. Your friend understands that. Can you help us? Hannah asked, her voice pleading. We need to find him. The woman hesitated, her expression shifting. You must embrace this place first, or you may never see him again. A place? What are you talking about? I questioned, frustration bubbling inside me. Everything you seek is intertwined with the magic of this forest, she replied. You choose to run, but it is time to confront what you are running from. Before I could argue, a low rumbling filled the air, the ground beneath us trembling slightly. We don't have much time, the woman warned. If you wish to find Tim, you must unlock the power of the crystal. The crystal. The memory of its rhythmic pulse flooded back to me. How do we do that? Touch it, but beware. The truth may not be what you wish to find, she said, retreating slightly. I looked at Hannah, who met my gaze with wide eyes. There was fear, but also a flicker of hope. Should we? She whispered, her voice barely audible. We had come this far. I nodded, stepping forward toward the crystal. As my fingers brushed its surface, a jolt of energy coursed through me, overwhelming and intense. Images flashed before my eyes, moments with Tim, laughter in the sunshine, but then dark shadows crept in, threatening to swallow everything. Then everything went dark again. The woman's voice echoed in my mind. The choice is yours to make. Before I could decide, the familiar growl ripped through the air once more. The creature returned, its eyes fixed on me with a hungry intensity. We have to run, I yelled to Hannah, but I was no longer sure where to go. The shadows had deepened, and the magical symbols flickered ominously. A choice loomed before me. Face the creature and protect what we had, or seek out the secrets hidden in the magic of the woods. My heart raced, but I knew whatever I decided could change everything. I didn't have time to think. The growl echoed, more menacing this time. I turned to Hannah, her face pale as fear watched over her. We can't stay here, I exclaimed, grabbing her hand. We dashed toward the tree line, the darkness closing in around us. Branches snagged at my clothes as we hurried deeper into the woods, but the creature's growl followed closely. My heart pounded as I searched for a place to hide. Hannah, over there, I pointed to a dense cluster of bushes. We squeezed into the thicket, pressing ourselves into the ground. The growl faded momentarily, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the sound of heavy footsteps. I held my breath, trying to make sense of the chaos unfolding. What is that thing? I whispered. Hannah shivered beside me. I don't know, but it feels wrong. Like, it's not from this world. Suddenly the woman's words echoed in my mind. The truth may not be what you wish to find. What had I unlocked with the crystal? The idea scared me, but I shoved it aside for now. Survival came first. As the footsteps grew distant, I dared to peek out. The clearing was empty, but strange symbols glowed faintly on nearby trees, a reminder of the magic we'd stumbled upon. We have to keep moving, I suggested, still unsure of our direction. Where? Hannah replied, her voice trembling. This place feels like a maze. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. Let's head toward those symbols. Maybe they'll lead us to Tim, I said, pointing toward a tree with a shimmering mark etched into the bark. We crept out of the bushes, cautiously retracing our steps. With each symbol we passed, I felt a draw, but not a comforting one. It was as if the forest itself was beckoning me to unlock deeper truths, secrets that were best left hidden. Do you think we'll really find him? Hannah asked, her voice small. I hesitated. I don't know, but we have to try. As we moved forward, I noticed something strange about one of the glowing symbols. It pulsed in rhythm, much like the crystal. Wait, look at that, I said, rushing over. Hannah clutched my arm. What if it's a trap? But I couldn't stop. I leaned closer, and the symbol started to shift, revealing a pathway through the bramble. I think this is the way. We exchanged uncertain glances, but knew we had little choice. With hesitant steps, we entered the path that seemed to open just for us. The deeper we went, the air grew colder. We reached a small clearing, and the atmosphere shifted again. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the center of the space. Tim! Tim! I shouted, but he didn't seem to see us. He stood frozen, staring at a different glowing crystal, much like the one we had encountered. Why isn't he responding? Hannah whispered, panic creeping into her voice. Before I could answer, I felt a tremor beneath my feet. The creature roared again, much closer now. The ground shook violently, and I caught a glimpse of shadowy movement at the edge of the clearing. We need to get him and go, I urged, but as I stepped forward, the air warped, and everything twisted into a swirl of colors. I reached for Tim, but suddenly everything went dark, and I was thrown backward, landing hard on the cold ground. That's when I saw it.
a pair of glowing eyes staring at me through the dark, fiery and fierce. The darkness pressed in around me, alive with whispers, a symphony of confusion and terror. I blinked into the void, trying to orient myself. I could hear Hannah's voice, muted and distant, as if she were submerged beneath the waters of an unseen ocean. "Emily, please, where are you?" Gradually, shapes began to form in the darkness. I pushed myself up, my heart pounding as I recognized the clearing from before.
The symbols were still there, dimmer now, swathed in an unsettling glow. Tim was still standing, but he appeared different, disconnected from reality, as though he were merely a reflection on the surface of a shadowy pond. "Tim!" I cried, lunging toward him. "Can you hear me?" He didn't respond, lost in some trance induced by the strange energy emanating from the crystal before him. I felt a wave of panic surge as I glanced around for Hannah. "Hannah!" I yelled, my voice cracking. Then I heard her, rushing footsteps, frantic. "I'm here!" she shouted, just as the growl erupted again, echoing like thunder through the air. The creature's eyes glowed brighter, capturing the dim light of the symbols as it emerged from the shadows again, its maw open wide, sharp teeth poised to strike. There was a predatory grace in its movements, a reminder that nature's cruel design could bend toward fury in an instant. "Run!" I shouted to Hannah, who had just burst into the clearing behind me. "We have to get Tim and go!" When I turned back, the creature launched forward. Time froze as I watched its fierce gaze lock onto me. Just as I felt a surge of dread, I heard a voice, strangely familiar yet haunting. "Welcome back, Emily." It was the woman from before, emerging from the shadows beside Tim. She reached for the crystal, her fingers brushing against its surface, and with a flash, the light expanded, enveloping us in a luminescent cocoon. "Trust the magic of the forest," she instructed, her eyes fixed on the creature. "You must confront what you fear." "Confront? What do you mean?" My voice trembled as I stood transfixed, unsure if I should flee or face whatever truth awaited me. The ground trembled beneath our feet, and the air filled with an electric tension. The creature thrives on your fear. Embrace it, and it will lose its power. As I stared into the creature's eyes, terror surged within me, threatening to drown me. But then I felt a flicker of something else, a determination ignited by the need to protect my friend. "I'm not afraid of you," I shouted, forcing my voice to be steady. "Get away from us!" At my words, the creature hesitated, its growl faltering. The sudden shift in energy was palpable. I could feel the weight of fear lifting slightly. Tim began to stir, shaking off whatever trance had gripped him. "Emily?" he murmured, and I felt a rush of relief mixed with urgency. "What happened?" "Just hold on. We need to get out," I urged, pulling him back toward us. The light from the crystal flickered, responding to my resolve. The creature snarled, but it seemed to shrink back from our united front. Drawing on the magic of the forest, I stepped forward. "You don't control us." In that moment, the symbols etched into the ground began to glow brighter, pulsing rhythmically, responding to my words. They shot tendrils of light toward the creature, wrapping around it, constraining its movements. A howl of frustration echoed through the clearing, and I felt the energy shifting. Hannah, breathing heavily, joined me. "What are we doing?" "I don't know, but we have to keep going." The creature writhed, caught in a web of light. I grasped Hannah's hand tighter, ripples of power blooming from where we held on to each other. The forest responded, vines slithering out from the ground, curling around the creature's limbs. With one last push, we shouted in unison, abandoning any remnants of fear that lingered in our hearts. "Leave us be!" Everything happened at once. The creature let out a furious roar, and the whole clearing fractured into shadow and light as the magic surged upward, forming a whirlwind. Just when I thought it might implode, suddenly there was silence. The light receded, and I found myself back in the clearing, disoriented but unharmed. Tim looked just as bewildered as Hannah. What just happened?" We did it," I breathed, relief flooding through me as the oppressive tension dissolved into the stillness of the forest. But a nagging question lingered. Were we truly safe? Or had we simply deferred the danger? I glanced back at the woods, their shadows extending beyond the light,
silently beckoning. "What's going to happen now?" I asked, uncertainty creeping back. "They'll always watch," the woman's voice echoed, hauntingly serene, lingering in the air. With one last look at the symbols glowing faintly beneath the trees and the remnants of shadows skirting away, I turned with an uneasy heart. "Let's go home," I whispered, wanting desperately to leave that place behind. But as we walked away, I knew the mysteries of the woods, of the teacher who vanished, and of the creature lurking in the dark, would follow me, finding a place deep within my mind, forever unresolved, just out of reach. The light dimmed as we stepped back toward the road, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, watching, waiting. I moved through the world, but I never went back to those woods again. Shadows danced in reflective corners of my mind, and the haunting echo of the woman's warning remained, a thread tethering me to a secret I might never fully understand.